So to get us started, I'd like to turn it over to Todd Wolfson, Interim President of HELU and Vice President of Rutgers AAUP-AFT. Todd, you're on.
Hey everybody, it's great to see all these beautiful faces, although I don't see you anymore because I'm now spotlighted, but I did before. So it's great to see you all. Todd Wolfson, Vice President of Rutgers AAUP-AFT, and as Jessica flagged, Interim Chair of Higher Ed Labor United. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm really excited to be here. And I'm just going to really briefly lay out. Well, first, I think I just want to say how exciting it is to be part of the labor movement in higher ed in this moment and how important we're seeing in labor writ large. We're seeing the most militant strike wave we've seen and organizing we've seen in a long time. And then amazingly, that militancy is being led by the sector we're in, which is one of the most militant sectors in labor right now with, just in the last, in this academic year, strikes in Michigan, strikes in New York, strikes in California, strikes in Illinois, Chicago, strikes right now at Temple. I'm in Philly, so we're with you, TUGSA. And it's a time, but also threats that our brothers and sisters in Florida are facing from Ron DeSantis. And so it's a really critical time to be fighting over the future of higher ed and organizing. And all I want to do is just lay out who HELU is and what we are. And so Higher Ed Labor United our goal is to build a wall-to-wall, i.e. industrial organizing. We organize not just faculty, adjunct faculty, but everyone on our campuses together when possible. So we want to build a wall-to-wall, coast-to-coast movement of higher ed workers that can transform higher education. And we want to do it with our students and within our communities. So that's the real goal of HELU. And I think we have something like 150 unions that have signed on to our higher ed vision statement and platform. And those are unions in every state. And we're talking about some wall-to-wall unions, usually United campus workers, if they're going to be wall-to-wall, but not always. But we also have adjunct unions, full-time faculty unions, grad worker unions, staff unions, medical unions, postdoc unions across the board. And our real fight is a fight over the future of higher ed, a fight over winning college for all, a fight to end contingency and the substandard work conditions of our brothers and sisters on many campuses, a fight to end student debt, and a fight to remake public higher ed. And that's what we're doing together. And that's really all I got to say. And I have the beautiful honor of getting to announce our next speaker or call up our next person. They're not called up, but you know what I mean. She's an author, she's an organizer, she's a strategist, and she actually keeps us all honest when we're thinking about what is to be done in this work. Helena Worthen. So take it away, Helena.
Hi, thank you, Todd. I'm Helena Worthen, she, her, and I am here because I find the HELU vision really inspiring, and I hope I'm unmuted. I find it really inspiring. I think it's radical enough. I think that if we really look at the nitty-gritty of wall-to-wall and coast-to-coast, that is actually radical enough to turn the situation around. And we know what the situation is. The condition that most drives me and motivates me to put my energy into this is the condition of contingency, which is something that faculty in every state know about, and people in other workforces, in the custodial and the transportation and the food service workers, everybody who makes higher education run knows about contingency, the lack of job security that makes it so that people are vulnerable to all kinds of threats and loss of jobs and ultimately inability to do your work right, which is one of the things that people in the custodians and the faculty have in common. For the faculty, it's sometimes called academic freedom. For other people, it can be called the right to do your job right without fear of being disciplined or punished or laid off. So that's what drives me. It's the idea of contingency. And I'm going to pass this on to our Secretary Treasurer, Levin. Levin, would you step up, please?
Thank you so much, Helena. Hi, everyone. My name is Levin. I use they, them pronouns. I'm from UAW 4121. We represent the academic workers here at the University of Washington. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about what HELU is, what we do, and what we're planning on doing. But before I kind of get there, I just wanted to invite folks to take a moment and think about a situation where you felt like you had power. And whether that's coming from within you or whether that's coming from the connections that you have with other folks, just kind of thinking about one instance that you felt like you were connected with other folks and that you had power to change a situation that you wanted to change. And now that I've held the silence for a slightly uncomfortable period of time, I'm going to bring us all back, but I want us to hold on to that where we went, wherever it is that we individually went. And if you want to share in the chat, that's great. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to start from that place where we all individually know and have felt through different situations where we've all held power, especially through being engaging in collective action and being connected to other folks, is truly the vision that drives us to form HELU and to expand this network of folks so that even more and more people engaging in higher ed and working in higher ed and making higher ed truly work, so that more of us can feel empowered to change the conditions that we are under. So HELU came together in 2021, again, around the simple idea that I think Helena and Todd had spoken to, that building across differences that institutions, particularly higher education institutions, are really good at instituting within us, building across those very differences of job category, of union affiliation, geography, race, gender, and class, all of those things, by building across those differences and bringing together higher education union locals, as well as higher ed workers, to unify and fight back against the gutting and gigification of our sector as well. So ultimately, we do believe that our struggle to transform higher education so that it works for students, for workers, and communities is more than an economic justice fight. We really do see it as a fight for racial and environmental justice, as well as a fight for the future of our democracy. And so united across that vision, we've, over the past couple of years, built this network of folks who have engaged in what that vision looks like, helped develop it into an actionable set of goals, and come together through Winter Summit, where thousands of folks were able to participate and share that vision and build with each other so that we are building connections so that we are able to engage in the struggle all together in a powerful way. Currently, we're working on a couple of key programs, and I'm just going to mention a couple, but I think there is a link to this one pager about HELU that you might also find helpful that I'm going to drop in the chat. So the two things that I wanted to highlight as the things that we're working on currently are our National Coordinated Organizing Campaign, as well as, oh, I'm so sorry, Tracy or Jessica, I think the link might be a little bit, or it might be broken for me. If you could just check and put the right link in the chat.
I'll get
That
one
would
in
be
there.
great. Thank you, Tracy. The two things that I wanted to flag are our National Coordinated Organizing Campaign, where we've created an organizing space to build the sort of connective tissue for the wave of organizing and strikes in our sector that we've been seeing play out over the past couple of months, and we know that it's happening and unfolding right now. To be able to elevate a lot of the same messaging or the same sort of issues that we're facing to a national level, and to be able to coordinate actions across all of our campuses and geographies. Another thing that we're working on in tandem is building out an exciting political campaign and organization around legislative advocacy so that we are able to win on key legislative fights that are currently structuring our higher education systems across the state and across the US, and building power to be able to get more members and more unions participating in this vision. So I'm gonna go ahead and as Tracy is looking for the link, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up sort of this section around what we're doing and what we're headed into. I just wanna leave everyone with, again, a call to come by a general meeting, to get in touch with one of us if you have any questions about what it looks like to get involved in HELU, what kinds of exciting campaigns you want to work on with us and through us. And I'm going to now pass that on to Josh from TUGSA, the Temple University Graduate Students Association, to give a quick example of the kinds of support that we can be providing each other and the battles that we can be winning. Josh?
Thanks so much, and I'm so happy to be here as a part of HELU. Yeah, we've been on strike for 9 days now, I think. It's hard to remember. And we've our contract expired in February of last year. That's how long we've been without a raise. We make $19,500 a year on average, minus fees, minus taxes, in a city that's cost of living is about 37 now. So that's why people are out. We're out because we need more than 5 days parental leave, so that people can both, be home with their kids when they have kids or with their partners, and that people can be working mothers and fathers and come to Temple. And we need dependent health insurance, and we need better workloads and all of the things. The strike has been going really well. This whole time, Temple has underestimated us the whole time. And that's where we're at. Yesterday, there was a change of events. I think most of you have seen in the news that they decided to add tuition back on to our accounts and threaten to put a hold on our accounts by March 9th, which threatens our dissertations, it threatens our student status. This is unprecedented. And they also decided to terminate illegally our health insurance itself. That was a student plan. And they did that specifically to target organizers in places that were trying to organize international students, which is very difficult because of the retaliatory actions that Temple is taking. People are very scared, and they should be in some ways, but we are also getting people to come out. And there was a really incredible press conference today with 2 of those people that I've known for a very long time that literally the day before were told by their pharmacists that they didn't have health insurance anymore, which if you're on an I-20 means you may never get to come back to the United States again if you don't have your health insurance. And he was deflated. He felt like he wanted to collapse. To someone who I've been working with for a year, trying to organize. And the next day he came out and spoke in front of hundreds of people and said, "I'm not afraid." So I think that's incredible. And I think it says a lot about how we're going to win. And we are going to win. And we need to win because they set a precedent where this is going to affect everybody. If we lose, they're going to copycat everywhere. And I think people are realizing that. So we're going to win. None of us are going to go back after this. They've instilled that undergrads are going to do a walkout next week. And I've been speaking of building across the university, there's a lot of different unions at Temple. And I would love to have a wall-to-wall. And what Temple just did was build the foundation for that. Because I've been talking to workers on campus, and they realized too that Temple is just going to do that to them. So I'm talking to all the facilities people, and I'm telling them they need to do this walkout too. I know it's dangerous and all these different things, but they're really, really considering it. And I think that could be the beginning of a great thing. And Temple did something that means that we either lose and CLA essentially gets dissolved and 200 people lose their jobs, and that's scary, or we win and Temple becomes TUGSA, and that's it. And yeah, we're gonna win and we're gonna do it. And yeah, donate to the strike fund, all that. Words of support are great, picket lines, all that. Todd's been awesome. Amber over at AFT, Rutgers, Camden's been awesome. People have been coming out every day. I talked to some high schoolers down the street, went to go talk to them about this. They might come over for the walkout, all this different stuff. So it's been probably the most incredible week of my life, honestly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Josh. Oh, go ahead, Levin.
No, I think we were going to do the same thing by of thanking Josh and sending all the solidarity your way. Please keep an eye out on the HELU listserv for additional ways to support, and make sure that you're checking out all of the links that Tracy and others are putting in the chat. Donate to their strike fund, and we look forward to supporting you in this fight. We have your back in many different ways. I'm going to pass it over to Ian Gavigan, HELU steering committee member and member of Rutgers AAUP-AFT. Ian?
Hey, everyone. Excuse me, I think I lost some of my voice at the TUGSA picket earlier. I just want to shout out once again the work that Josh and everyone else in TUGSA and in the Temple community and in the larger Philadelphia community are doing to fight back against the depravity of the Temple administration. Please, please, please donate to their strike fund, sign the No Scab pledge, and show your support publicly and as much as you can. So what's next is we have a panel discussion, and we're going to be doing it with a number of HELU leaders who are leaders or have been leaders in various capacities of a wide range of higher ed labor unions. We, as has been repeated multiple times, HELU was founded as and sees itself as and believes that the future lies in building across job categories, across all sorts of lines of difference that often can divide workers from one another, and that our job is to bring people together and to break down those barriers. And so I'd like to invite, it looks like everyone's been spotlighted, almost everyone. There's Anne. So we've got TJ, Marcus, Levin, Angel, and Anne. And so the first thing I'd like for you to do is introduce yourselves. Tell us about your work, maybe your history of work, affiliations you have had with unions and or other labor organizations, and how you first got involved in higher ed labor and maybe also in Higher Ed Labor United. So I'm just going to go down the list in the order that I have it. So TJ, could you go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, hi, my name is TJ Asena. I work at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon, where I'm a project coordinator. I'm a member of AFSCME Local 328, and I got involved with HELU when someone reached out to me directly and was like, hey, we're starting a wall-to-wall, coast-to-coast coalition of unions. And I thought, that sounds really cool, and I want to get my union involved in this.
Thanks, TJ. We're so lucky to have you. Marcus, down in Maryland, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Hi, everyone. Marcus Johnson. I'm at University of Maryland, and I'm a part of the AAUP chapter there. We're currently working on getting a bill through the legislature for collective bargaining rights. So it's super exciting to be connected to this great, inspiring community. So before I was at Maryland, I was at CUNY. So I, enjoyed being a member of a really robust and large union. I came to Maryland. I was super shocked that there was no union and we didn't even have collective bargaining rights. So yeah, I'm kind of getting my feet wet. I kind of got plugged in by accident, and next thing I knew, I was attending HELU meetings and not looking back. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Marcus. And I can't wait for you to share more about the incredible work you all are doing in Maryland to change the landscape for higher ed workers. Levin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I know I gave a quick introduction. My name's Levin. I use it in pronouns. I'm from the University of Washington. I'm a current fourth-year PhD candidate in the information school here. I am an international student, and I've spent about 13 years here in the US at this point, cumulatively. All of those 13 years have been dependent on a higher education institution, whether that's dependent on someone who was a grad student or whether that is me working as a researcher at a higher education institution. So I've navigated a lot of different visa systems and the US immigration system in general. I think up until 2021, a lot of my experiences and relationship to the institution that is higher education, not just a single university, but the whole infrastructure that enables higher ed in the United States, was something that felt really limiting to me. There were constantly changing rules. There were constantly changing limitations to my existence in the States that I think I was constantly navigating. So I always felt like I was at the mercy of these systems that I didn't even begin to comprehend where to understand. I accidentally got involved in union organizing. Having been an international student, I think I was bringing in a lot of different assumptions and cultural sort of understandings of what a union is from my own background. So I wasn't one of those day one gung-ho, like I'm all ready to be an organizer kind of people. A year into my grad program, I really started wanting to find a community where I wanted to think more through what it meant to be an international student. So I showed up at the Union Locals International Solidarity Working Group, and it's been 3 years. And somehow I am now the president of our local, and we have a lot of exciting ongoing campaigns in internal organizing and also external organizing in Washington State and on the West Coast, organizing higher ed workers from Alaska to down in California and beyond. So it's kind of been a whirlwind, but ultimately I think it's been a journey where I've been empowered to really rewrite the relationship that I have to the university and to higher ed, and I think everyone deserves to do that. And I think we have the power to do that if we do that together. So that's sort of how I got involved, and that kind of motivation and interest in wanting to connect more broadly, to think broadly and more a bigger picture way of how we can change some of the immigration systems, some of the ways that higher ed is dependent and works through a lot of other structural inequities is what got me involved in HELU. And I'm so excited to be here today with everyone.
Thank you, Levin. Angel, you're up next.
Hey, thank you. Angel Jimenez, she, him pronouns, or he, her, you can mix them up, blend them, get creative. So I guess I'm a non-tenure track faculty at St. Leo University. I'm library faculty, but I do writing center work with one other faculty member, my colleague, the inimicable John David Harding, who happens to be here in attendance. Thank you, baby. So, and then but my background is in literature, so I usually get to teach a lit course as well every semester. I guess my introduction to labor unions was just being a member as a grad student at the University of South Florida, but I really didn't get involved until about 2018, 2019 with my local chapter at St. Leo. So I started off as a member at large, and currently a senator, although they busted our union in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic as we were putting our lives on the line for that university. We just had a hearing with the NLRB, and it looks like it's going to swing in our favor. So we're just waiting for the judge the briefs were actually just filed earlier on on Monday of this week. And the judge has, I think, 60 days or something like that to make a ruling. So we're feeling confident about that. What else? Yeah, and sorry, my affiliation is United Faculty of Florida.
Thanks, Angel. I know down in Florida, you all are under immense assault at the moment, and so much solidarity to you, and anything that we can do to support your NLRB efforts right now, please let us know. And last but by no means least, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks. I'm Ann Bailey, she, her pronouns. I have no affiliation. For 29 years, I've been an adjunct off and on. And during that time, I wrote 2 books that were based on oral histories I did of blue-collar queers, and that was my introduction to unions. So when I was talking to gay, lesbian, and trans steelworkers, their union kept coming up, and their union did not see or respect them as queers at all. And I didn't expect that. So I started trying to figure out what the overlap was between queer activism and union activism, and trying to expand that space, which I have now been doing in every way I can think of for 15 years. That place should overlap more. Most queers are poor. You know, most people in unions. Anyway, that space should be expanded, and I will say more about that in a million other contexts. I ultimately wound up quitting academia and working for SEIU organizing adjuncts, which I did for 3 years in St. Louis, but I was laid off. So there are problems in every direction. But I will talk about all of that more as we continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. And your record of scholarship and organizing is one that we should all be super thankful for. So I want to open up a few questions for the panel. We don't have like a ton of time at this point. I think we have about 10 minutes. And so maybe try to keep your answers brief and effective to these questions. So I think I want to start by just posing this question about, and we've already heard from some of you about the challenges. Like, what are some of the challenges that your local, or if it's not your local, that you see in the broader higher education community that we're facing that make participation in a wall-to-wall, coast-to-coast organization like HELU so critical in this moment? I don't want to like call on anyone, but does someone want to start us off there for what's the importance in this moment given the challenges we face?
I don't mind going.
Go ahead.
So I think it's really clear that fascism is here, and we're seeing its ferocity in Florida, and the epistemic and pedagogical violence that we're seeing right now is only going to lead to like literal violence, physical violence. This model is already being replicated in Oklahoma, Texas, and today South Carolina released legislature now is requiring universities to report how much they're spending on DEI initiatives, which obviously in Florida we find out they spend nothing on them anyway. So it's like, so I think right now that's where perhaps the urgency lies.
Thanks, Angel. And it looks like you have some thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 3 years working with adjuncts, and I worked as one forever, right? I had an adjunct who taught 32 classes a year routinely. And these are all people with semester by semester contracts that can be fired at any time, and they frequently are, and it's totally legal. So, when Helena and everybody else says we started with contingents, wall to wall means, adjuncts are the bottom of the food chain. And if adjuncts can unite with non-tenure track and tenured and librarians and staff, then possibly we can get collective power and make that situation better. Without that, so on campuses like the UIC, which is awesome, right? But their amazing new contract does not include adjuncts. Adjuncts are specifically excluded. Wall to wall and coast to coast means we don't do that. We don't leave out the bottom. We take everyone or no one. And that's really important to me.
Thank you, Anne. Absolutely.
I can go if.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Anne was saying, that I'm on tenure track, and it's not okay to assume that the success of my career has no implications for my many other colleagues at my university. And what we see at University of Maryland and what we see in other places around the country is that the size of hiring through tenure track is shrinking, and the size of contingency is growing and growing and growing. And so part of building this type of network is moving beyond this system of, oh, well, this is the way that things have been, and instead like really imagining in spaces together and being inspired by movements across the country to see the change that we want to see. So at Maryland, seeing that so many folks around the country are now striking and using their labor power, we're really inspired, and we're trying to get the right to collectively bargain so that we can bring the university to the table when we need to. So it's super useful to have this space to imagine together and build together.
Yeah, I will just say, like, for staff at my university, it's a constant thing of people disappear, people leave, there's high turnover, and then their jobs just never get replaced. FTs get passed from one person to another, split up, like work just kind of piles on. And there's always the thing like, well, we'll hire eventually when we're out of this financial trouble, which never ends, even though working at a medical university, there we constantly read reports about how well it's doing financially. Like staff are just constantly being stretched thinner and thinner. And in the hospital part, it's even worse. Like the people who work in the healthcare part of OHSU, like hospitals are understaffed on purpose. And the pandemic has really just kind of highlighted how this staffing is just destroying the healthcare systems.
Thanks, TJ. I just want to underscore like we've heard from 4 very different perspectives about the converging crises in higher ed. And I just want to say, and since this is a meeting about pitching HELU, like there are very few spaces where even that conversation happens, let alone a strategic organizing process and analysis and like planning and campaigning around the intersections of these crises and the ways that they're playing out in the uneven ways across this country with a different kind of ferocity in Florida and Kentucky from California and Maryland, but it's everywhere. And we need to link them together. And so it's just really powerful to hear all of your perspectives in this way. Levin, unless you wanted to add anything, I was going to maybe jump to a different question. So we've got another 3 or 4 minutes before I think we want to open the floor for conversation and questions from the audience. But I'd like to ask, like, are there specific examples of how working with HELU has impacted your local? Maybe it's getting solidarity support around a solidarity ask. Maybe it's like helping you change the way conversations inside your local happen. Maybe it's something else. So yeah, I just want to open up that question. Like, how is this changing what your local is doing or how your local is thinking?
I can talk. My boss did our bargaining, and he always told the adjuncts whenever the adjuncts wanted anything, he would always say, yeah, that'd be great, but we have to have a national movement to make that happen. And as soon as HELU happened and I joined and I got our union to send some small amount of money to the Winter Summit and, sign on, then every time you said that, I could say there is a national movement. This is the national movement. We're a part of the national movement. It's happening. And, I could try to get members to show up, and it just felt like a way to cut him off at the knees whenever he tried to take that tack. It was very important.
Thanks, Anne. Angel, looks like you were getting off mute a second ago. Do you want to jump in here?
Sure. Thank you, Ian. So, part of this attack on higher ed, this recent attack on higher ed in Florida, is this post-tenure review process. So, which effectively is the first step towards ending tenure. We made a solidarity ask with HELU, and I was just so impressed by how quickly things got done and how everything got circulated. Like, we shared a petition, and also the Board of Governors website where you could send a message to them directly. And I was just like really happy and impressed with how quickly everyone in HELU is ready to support folks on a national scale. And I think that's a collective wall-to-wall national response to these attacks is our only chance of surviving and later thriving.
Thanks for sharing that, Angel. We're running up against the preset limit for this first part of the panel, but I want to see, did anyone want to jump in before we move on, or should we start going to the floor for some questions?
I was just going to shout out the solidarity asks. It's an amazing ability to be able to say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Can we get some support? And HELU broadcast that around the country, and that is huge.
Yeah, and
I just wanted to,
go ahead, Levin. No, you go. You're the panelist.
No, I just wanted to add one last thing, and I think that's for me, especially someone who kind of really, like, my journey has been a roller coaster getting involved, and HELU really was for me as in my own development as an organizer and as hopefully someone who is a leader, like getting involved in HELU and learning from so many different organizers and so many different organizers that bring so many different kinds of strengths. It was like getting a crash course so quickly, and also a place where I could turn to for support in general. And I think that's been really helpful in making sure that our union is growing and also that I'm growing as a leader. And I think that's one of the things that has been really impactful for me too.
Thanks for sharing that, Levin. you know, all these experiences I think illustrate the ways that HELU is different for everyone. And we're still in an early phase, but we're already able to channel and to corral and to like set people onto missions. And you know, I think even in Florida, like we all, UFF taking the lead, we were all able to push back, delay, and hopefully beat back some of this assault. And you know, we're not going to win every fight, but this kind of collaboration is so important. I want to open the floor, and because the chat's a little hard to follow for a facilitator, I'm just going to get some questions, maybe one or two at a time.
Read?
I
want me to go to
send them
people in
to
the
you
chat?
too, Ian, but
Great.
you got them right as text. I send them
Yep.
to you.
So we have one question from the floor, which is, what do we anticipate will be the effects of drops in enrollment on organizing? I have some thoughts on that. I know I'm not a panelist, but you know, I think that one of the key insights of the Higher Ed Labor United strategy is that it's a both-and approach to organizing on campuses and to thinking politically, to thinking about the larger context in which higher ed takes place. And so there's only so much that we can win, and we should fight for the world in our on-campus struggles and, where possible, contracts. And higher ed is a massive, sprawling network of public and private and for-profit institutions, which are all essentially subcontractors for state and federal governments doing various kinds of teaching and research and healthcare. And at the end of the day, that's the terrain on which so much has to be fought out. And so declining enrollment's a great excuse for administrators who may actually have less money, or they may not either. But at the end of the day, we need to be doing work on campuses and across campuses to politicize that struggle, to reframe it away from making higher ed funding structured around tuition and student debt and institutional debt, and onto the publicly funding it as a social good, in not releasing money freely for administrators and associate vice presidents and deanlets to do what they will, but to spend money for the purposes of teaching, research, and service. And so I think that's what, I think there's clearly going to be effects on organizing. There's clearly going to be effects in contract campaigns, and it's up to us to reframe it and to take our struggles not just at the local level, but politicize them to the highest possible scale. Does anyone else want to respond to this question? I just took a lot of time as a facilitator. So we have another question on the floor from an audience member who's starting to form an initial organizing committee where they would like to explore forming an independent union at a small Jesuit university. Does the panel have, does anyone already in wall-to-wall unions or working in, I would say, wall-to-wall context, have ideas on how to establish structural features to ward off the replication of inequalities of rank within our organizing efforts?
I have a question of clarification. So is this independent union going to include all workers at your university? Is that what you mean in terms of inequalities of rank, or?
Yeah, maybe we could invite the question asker to just clarify what they're thinking, because it's a really important and expansive question.
Sure. I don't know if y'all can hear me and see me, but yeah, we're just starting. So I should say I'm at Seattle University. We've already had a failed drive from 4 years ago where the university beat us back using their religious exemption argument. And so we're pushing for basically to produce a rank and file organization from the ground up, unaffiliated at this point. And the question is whether to pursue a wall-to-wall strategy. I'm an adjunct, so sort of part-time, lowest rung But in talking to folks, there is some enthusiasm across ranks, but there's also a lot of, and I'm just going to speak very frankly, there's a lot of discomfort among contingent faculty organizing with tenure line faculty, because tenure line faculty tend to dominate and frankly have less of an understanding of contingency. I think that's changing with younger faculty, to be honest. I think they have a much better sense, but this is a Jesuit university and some folks have been here for 30 years. and so we're kind of talking about, because I am interested in a rank and file across rank wall-to-wall union, but how to build structural, basically build in guardrails that prevent that sort of power imbalance reasserting itself. So really is just sort of ideas of how to form an organizing committee that starts from the principle of equality and has some sort of accountability mechanisms to keep it in place when, shit gets real.
Really critically important question. Does anyone on our panel want to respond? And I know there are some good ideas in the chat coming from some of our seasoned organizer scholar experts.
All I would say is there are huge distinctions in rank within the tenure track. And tenure track people organize all the time and they figure it out. So it feels to me like this is, to go back to what Ian was talking about, another externalization of kind of anxiety about collectivism. So, it's not that there are different ranks. It's that, obviously there are different ranks. There are different ranks of everything, but we can work together and we have a common goal. So if we could kind of focus on that and not get derailed into thinking about sort of assigning power to people, but focus on the common goal. That's kind of idealistic, but I do think all unions have huge power distinctions within them, and it's okay.
Thanks,
I
Anne.
wanted to build on Anne's answer too, because I actually think I actually think Ben, I think that question is really important, and I think that's one of the things that we get out of doing collective action, whether that's through union organizing or anything in general. That question that you're wrestling with, I don't think is something that we solve or something that we can sort of organize around or organize our way out of. But I think the relationships that are changed through organizing are ultimately the things that we get, and ultimately are the most powerful things that we get out of the process. And I do think there are structural things that we can do to make sure that our spaces are equitable and are not reproducing any kind of, not just sort of the academic hierarchy, but any kind of other structural inequalities, whether that's gender-based or sexual harassment or sexism or whatever else it is. And I think the opportunity that forming a union or engaging in collective action gives us, that is an opportunity for us to be able to rewrite those rules and create spaces within our organizing to be able to not wait for a world in which those are solved, but that we get to create those conditions and those spaces for us. And I think more concretely, some of the things that have, and I think, again, to Anne's point, this has come up in many different ways in a lot of the different kinds of organizing spaces that I've been in. Ultimately, I think some of the concrete things that have helped are making really, having frank conversations about organizing labor and who's doing what kinds of labor. Often in meetings, note takers, this is a replicated problem everywhere. Note takers tend to be femme or female presenting people. It might not even be something that registers to a lot of people, but that happens in organizing spaces all the time. Even in these discussions, often we turn to scholarly work, or that is also important, but we also know that lived experience is also important. So I think valuing those, where do we get evidence, things like that is also important. Making sure that people feel empowered to take on visible roles like facilitating, making sure that we're building in plans and infrastructures for training facilitators. All of those things can just, I think, kind of almost flipping the question on its head and thinking through what are the resources that we have right now, because we're able to form a union and because we're forming these spaces. How can we do that right now within our spaces is something that I found really helpful in thinking through striking the right balance of being practical sometimes, and also making sure that we're not waiting for a different world that can be better so that we can, solve all of these things.
Thanks, Levin and Anne, and to everyone in the chat. I just want to highlight a couple of things that people said in the chat. Tracy, who's an alum of the United Campus Worker Movement, which is a CWA wall-to-wall effort that's focused on states where public collective bargaining is not legal. They've done an enormous amount of work figuring out how to build these kinds of wall-to-wall cross-job category organizations that center the leadership of marginalized workers in terms of job category, in terms of race, in terms of gender. I would absolutely encourage you to take a look. Helena says one person, one vote. So there's some great stuff in there from Helena and Joe, Carl, a bunch of people. Also, just want to say, my union, Todd's union, a number of people on this call's union, Rutgers, AAUP-AFT. We've had like 6 job categories represent our union, from lowly graduate student workers like myself, who get paid, if they're lucky, $30,000 a year, up to distinguished full, like 40-year professors who make $400,000 a year, and everyone in between, almost everyone in between, and with a sibling local of adjuncts and a sibling local of medical faculty that we work deeply and closely together with. So there are models, and what I would say to you, Ben, above all else, is like, get involved in HELU. We have organizing trainings, organizing cohorts that we're doing with things like Organizing for Power. This is a space to help figure out these questions with our national coordinated organizing work, with the cohorts we're assigned to these organizing trainings. And anyone else who has questions like this is a space for you. And I just want to like underscore that. And I think on that note, I just want to thank our panel for joining us today. Thank you for the work and the organizing that you do on your campuses, and for the purposes of this conversation, more importantly, to unite us across our campuses and across our job categories. This, in our post-industrial economy, breaking down those barriers between so-called knowledge workers and those who aren't knowledge workers, between blue, white, pink, green, gray collar workers, between unions, between job categories. This is the critical work of our moment. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for joining the panel. And I'm going to hand it back to Jessica to take us out to the end.
Sounds great. I'm just going to say a few quick things and then turn it over to Ariana. She's actually going to close this out tonight. But I just wanted to, again, thank all of the speakers and panelists and all of you for being here tonight. I also want to just give a few quick ways that you can get involved in Higher Ed Labor United, HELU. First, if you aren't getting our monthly newsletter, please sign up, and I think Tracy can drop the link in the chat. Follow us on social media. I believe we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and so we'd love you to follow us on those social media platforms. And if you haven't already, talk to your local or labor organization about organizational membership. We're in the midst of an organizational membership drive. We have a lot of materials and a speaker bureau that is forming, and we'd love to come and talk to you and your union about HELU and how you can be involved. You can find more information on our website, and I think Tracy will also drop in our emails, and my email specifically if you'd like to reach out so that we can make sure we set up a time to talk about that. And if you're an individual interested in HELU membership, there is additional information on our website about individual membership as well. So I think I'll work on dropping anything in the chat if it hasn't been dropped in the chat, but I think Tracy's got it all covered, and I'm going to hand it over to Ariana Jacob, co-chair of the Executive Council and chair of bargaining at PSUFA, to close us out for this evening.
Thanks, Jessica. I was invited to close out this event, and I'm just excited that I got to be here and listen, because one of the things, so I am part of the leadership team of 8 people that lead adjunct only union at Portland State University. And my experience with getting involved with that union was one of trying to fight the isolation and exploitation that it feels like to be an adjunct faculty. And really the isolation was really a big part of that, like not having peers, because I'm allowed to go to a faculty meeting. So I'm concluding this event from why HELU matters to me and why I stay involved personally, which is that One thing is relationship. That fact that all of those people you just listened to, and like they have such great perspective, that I get to be, as a person who's in my little world, also in relationship with all of these people, and how meaningful that is in terms of the experience of being adjunct faculty, how meaningful it is in terms of having new ideas and new inspiration around how to function and how to help run a union, as a person who's also, like, I didn't come from a union background. I just happened to find out that this was something that was possible, and feel the power in it, and then what it really takes to transform our working conditions is something beyond our individual unions. That's clear. And HELU for me is the space where we are able to both imagine the transformation of higher education at the scale we need to face the crisis, and also be connected to actual solid organizing networks that can make change happen, that can make collective power, that is making collective power. And to me, to have that combination of the vision that is beyond what I ever thought I could even hope for transformation, and that now I do actually hope and believe because of this group and the organizing network that we really are, that we represent. The HELU network represents workers from almost 600,000 academic workers across the country. And it's amazing to be a part of that. And that is real power. And then I wanted to say one other thing, which is to paraphrase Naomi Williams, who's another person who helped start the organization of HELU, just that we need a fully funded, fully functional higher education system if we're going to ever make true the promise of an inclusive multiracial democracy. And so we need that. It just has to happen. So I hope that you will find your way to join us. And I'll just say one more thing, which is that part of what the political committee is doing right now is creating a campaign to do public education around the history of when higher education was able to be free in the country, and the possibility of how we organize a political campaign amongst our people and amongst our legislators to make that possible over the next, say, 5 years. Let's say 5 years. Thank you all.